So I'm Scott Kostal, the Executive Director of the Missouri Sedimentation Action Coalition, or MSAC. We are currently at the overlook at Terrace Park in Springfield, South Dakota. And behind me is the Missouri River. And in the mid-1950s, when Gavin's Point Dam was completed, this was the upper reach of Lewis and Clark Lake. So what we have outside of here would have been significant amount of open water along with some sandbars, as this was the furthest point upstream for the lake. And at that time, Springfield was the only city on Lewis and Clark Lake. Since then, sedimentation has started to come in, and it has really started to increase in recent years. And what you see now is much more of a marshy, wetland type of a environment with a couple of primary channels and a few other fast running areas through the sandbars and through the reeds. So where we are today, Lewis and Clark Lake is at approximately 35% filled with sediment, and we expect it to be 50% or more as we get into 2035 and 2040. Annually, the delta front heading towards Gavin's Point Dam, just up downstream from here, advances about 400 feet. In a wet or a flood year, flood event year, something like 2017 or even 2011 with the massive floods, that can increase to 4,000 feet, so almost a mile of additional sediment can go downstream. So a couple things are going to happen in what I will call the near future, so in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. As that front continues to go down, that reduces the capacity of the lake and will start to affect power generation out of Gavin's Point Dam. It will also have a significant impact on the other uses from the lake, which increasingly are adding recreation to those. But irrigation, water for the water systems that pull out of the lake, as well as those get increased sedimentation. Those are water intakes then that have to be relocated. There are recreation facilities that have been built or are being built that will not be usable in the next 15 to 20 years. So now we are about 5 miles downstream of Springfield, and we're at the original Bonhomme town site, and just outside the original Bonhomme Cemetery. This is now the leading edge of the delta, or what would be the upper reaches of Lewis and Clark Lake. At this point here, as you can see out in the river, here you have the marshes. You still have some open water, and then as we just go downstream a little bit to the east, then you can see where it opens up. Even though it's open water, there still is delta front underneath, because a lot of that water is very shallow as the sand and the silt is filling in. So over the course of probably the next 2 to 3 years, many of these open areas here will also be filled up to the point where the common reeds and the phragmites will be able to take hold, and so even here you'll see the sandbars out of the water and in there. So, and again, in the late 50s, a good portion of this would have been open water. There are some natural islands that are out in the middle of the river here, but a lot of this, all the way up to the water towers at Springfield, would have been part of the lake and would have been open and easily accessible waters. Ideally, what we want to do is maintain what we have, and so that ensures that we have a good lake, a good ability to draw water, and the ability for Gavin's Point Dam to continue to generate power well into the future.